Hi, Professor. This is Emma Li Xiaojia speaking, and this is my final presentation. I choose the Eastern philosophy on religion education as my final task. Okay, at the very beginning, and I just want to emphasize what is a philosophy again at the very beginning, because in the first class, and the teacher lectures Professor Yu taught us about some definition and some context about of the philosophy. So here I just want to review of that. Philosophy defined as the study of the wisdom or knowledge about the general problems, facts, and the situations connected with human existence, values, reasons, and general reality. And although the word philosophy originates in the Western tradition, many figures in the history of other cultures have addressed similar topics in similar way. So yeah, even though it comes from the Western, but based on the original of the philosophy, and the Eastern has its own philosophy definition as well. So, what is the Eastern philosophy? Eastern philosophy refers to the broad traditions that originated or were popular in some countries, just like India, Brazil, China, Japan, Korea, and to an extent, the Middle East. And in Eastern philosophy, the most important idea and characteristic view is that one could almost say the essence of it is awareness of the unity and mature interrelation of all things and events, the experience of all phenomena in the world as manifestations of a basic oneness. All things are seen as interdependent and inseparable parts of this cosmic whole, as different manifestations of the same ultimate reality. So here is a basic idea of Eastern philosophy. And when compare Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, they do have some similarities and differences. Something like, okay, for example, in terms of Eastern philosophy, it just focus on the mainly prevalent in Asian countries. So just now, I mentioned some of them: India, China, Korea, Japan, and also Middle East. And also, Eastern philosophy related to collectivism. And also, the Eastern philosophy, just both philosophers are centered on virtues. So, which means that it takes more of a spiritual approach. But when we just look to the Western philosophy, and we can see they do have some different, just like firstly, mainly used in the Western parts of the world, such as in the European countries. Yes, of course, it's a big difference. The Western philosophy just prevalent in Western countries, but the Eastern philosophy just prevalent in Asian countries. Okay, and the second biggest difference between Eastern and the Western philosophy is that Western philosophy deals with individualism, and we can see it's a big difference because Eastern philosophy just focus on the collectivism, and we have to collaborate. But however, Western philosophy just focus on individualism. Okay, so but when it comes to the third point, uh, it's same. Both philosophies center on virtues, but the finally one and the Eastern philosophy takes more of a spiritual approach, and it just emphasis on mind. But Western philosophy takes a more hands-on approach, which means that it just focus on the practice, action. Okay, So next part, I will introduce something Eastern philosophy on religion. Okay, so they do have um some content in Eastern religions, just like Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Islam. First one, okay, we can see that. And from the picture, yes, what is it's Iceland, Iceland. And what's the second one? And we can guess it's yeah, it's a profile here, and it's a Buddhism. Yeah, it's a Buddhism profile. And for the next picture, can you guess what a kind of religion it is? Yes, it's in China. It's a Confucianism. Because this picture is Confucian. Okay, the next one. Wow. Okay, this picture is Hinduism, and we can see this profile in India country, India movies everywhere. Okay, so firstly, I will introduce something about Buddhism. Buddhism focuses on the life of Buddha, Buddhist through the practice. Buddhism is a moral philosophy religion based upon the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, so Siddhartha Gautama became known as a Buddha. Buddha from the ancient India languages of Pali and Sanskrit means one who has awakened. It's derived from the verbal root "bud," mean to awaken or to be enlightened and to comprehend. And also, the Buddha offered metaphysical knowledge into the nature of a reality as well as a moral way of life. And the middle way is an important idea in Buddhist thought and practice. And also, Buddhism is to seek moderation and avoid the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. Okay, so the Buddha taught that the nature of reality was impermanent and interconnected. Okay, so we suffer in life because in Buddhism, and they just emphasize that like we suffer in life because our desire to transcend things. So liberation from suffering may come by training the mind and acting according to the laws of karma. So which means that cause and effect. For example, with right action, good things will come to you. Yeah, something like this. Okay, so here you can see from the picture, keep calm and let karma finish in it. So it emphasis on mind, the spiritual. Mm. And next one is Hinduism. Hinduism focus on the metaphysics philosophy of Hinduism beliefs. Hindu gods, all is one. And the first collection of India philosophy that was written down was Vedas. The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit Ved, means knowledge. The Veda are sacred knowledge, and their exact date is controversy. It is possible that the knowledge dates back 10,000 years BC and were first written about 3,000 BC. So here is some history of Hinduism. And the metaphysical foundation of Hinduism, which is expressed in both the Vedas and Upanishads, is that reality is one or absolute, changeless, perfect, and eternal. The ordinary human world of many separate and discrete things, and which our mind represents by our senses, is an illusion. Okay, through that's why through meditation and the purity of mind. And Hinduism just focus on that and point that one can experience their true self, which is the Brahman, God, the one infinite internal thing which causes and connects the many things. And also, the content of the Hinduism just a point that true enlightenment is a self-realization to experience the supreme reality as self. Okay, so the next one is comes from our China, Taoism. Taoism. Taoism is one of the great religions philosophies of ancient China. So it just along the Buddhism and the Confucianism and dates back to 440 BC. Taoism was adopted as a state religion of China, which Lao Tzu, so-called founder of Taoism, honored as a deity. And Lao Tzu was a contemporary of Confucius and wrote a book called Dao Te Ching, composed sometime between the 6th and the 3rd centuries BC. Some people believe Lao Tzu is a mythical character because from some story and states that the sport of Taoism ended in the 1911 with the end of the Qing dynasty and much Taoist heritage was destroyed. Yes. And Dao can be defined as path or road. Yeah, because in Dao it's Chinese pronunciation. So the meaning of that just like PPT is showing, it means path or road. The way of Dao is the way of nature and ultimate reality. Dao is often described as a force that flows through all life. A happy and virtuous life is one that is in harmony with the Tao, with nature. The philosophy of Taoism understands the Tao as a one thing which exists and connects the many things. Tao, nature, reality are one. Okay, next one just comes to the Confucianism. Yeah, Confucianism is really popular. In China. Confucianism is an ethical and a philosophical system based upon the teachings of a Chinese sage, Confucius. Confucius, yeah, from the picture, okay, from the left picture is a Confucius. Confucius was a famous thinker and social philosopher of China, whose teachings have deeply influenced East Asia for centuries. Living in the spring and autumn period, he was convinced of his ability to restore the world's order, though failed. So Confucius himself had a simple moral and political teaching. Okay, so here I just list some contents of that. And the first one is to love others, and the second one is to honor one's parents, and the third one is to do what is right instead of what is of advantage. And the next one is to practice reciprocity, for example, which means that don't do to others what you would not want yourself. And finally, is to rule by moral example instead of by force and violence, and so forth. So every time when I talk about Confucianism, I introduce this spirit to others, especially for other countries classmates, and I just explained, all good is good. Yeah, so I think it's a really important thing in Confucianism. And in Confucianism, his philosophy emphasized personal and governmental morality, uh, correctness of social relationships, and justice and sens- sincerity, and using them as an impartial orthodoxy doxery. Confucius thoughts had been developed into a vast and complete physical system known in the West as Confucianism. Okay, the last one is Islam. Islam. Yeah. Islam is a monotheistic Abrahamic religion originating with the teachings of Muhammad. The word Islam is derived from the Arabic word Aslama, which means to accept, surrender, or submit, or submission, or the total surrender of oneself to Allah. So, an adherent of Islam is known as a Muslim, meaning one who submits to Allah. The prime message of Islam is the unity of God. That is, the creator of the world is one, and He alone is worthy of worship, and that Muhammad is His messenger. Okay, so the first Muslim philosopher of the noted was Al-Kandi. He was Arab descent and died sometime before 870 AD. And next one was Al-Razi, who died about 925 or 935 AD, and was known for his rejection of a revealed religion. And Farabi, who died in 950 AD, was Turkish descent and was known among Muslims as a second teacher. And the next representer is Ibn Sina, who died in 1037 AD, was without doubt the most influential of all the Muslim philosophers on the later development of Islamic philosophy and theology. And the next representative is Ibn Rushd. And he is the Spaniard who died in 1198 AD, was known mainly for his commentaries on Aristotle. Okay, the ultimate being or reality is Allah. So here are some spirits, and here are some context of Islam. Allah, what is Allah? Yes, and Allah is described by the Quran. For the understanding of man is a sole self-subsisting or pervading internal and absolute reality. Allah is omnipotent. To him is due the primal origin of everything. Okay, so it's him, the creator. And in reality, man is the highest of all the creation. Allah has created him the most beautiful of, beautiful of moths. He is born with the divine spirit breathed into him. The sole aim of a man, therefore, is a progressive achievement of all divine attributes. So after introducing so many religions, and the next part I will introduce some Eastern philosophy on education. Okay, in terms of Eastern philosophy on education, and I will illustrate from the three perspectives. The first one is a way of a teaching process. The second one is a student involvement within classroom activity. And the third one is expression of learning process. Okay, and firstly, and just look at the way of a teaching process. Okay, so based on the Eastern philosophy and towards education, it holds on the concept of teaching, and students receive full knowledge from the teachers inside of the classroom. Students, in a way, receive knowledge in rigid way as they only seem to learn and study strictly from the teachers. So we can see from the picture, yeah, so it's a really typical, yeah, typical picture, just to say, to present that, represent that of Eastern philosophy. Yes, and see teacher standing on the in the middle, and also the students, the kids, are all of them are sitting and listening the teachers. Okay, in terms of a student involvement in the classroom, and prefer passive learning and normally obtain the knowledge directly from the teachings of religion, such as Islam, Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, and Taoism. Yes, so it's a passive learning. Okay, so the next one, teaching and learning process through Eastern education philosophy stress on the major outcomes from the teachers. Teachers are fully responsible on the class effectiveness by preparing and planning all the activities for their students. Okay. Um, so the students are not trained or required to do anything, but every materials are given by the teachers, and also they are not required to carry out any research on the topics that are going to be discussed in the next lesson, but only responsible to receive input from their teachers. Okay, so in terms of expression of the learning process, the students practice the concept of the memorizing, as this philosophy focuses mainly on book learning and memorization within the teaching and learning process. And the system of education is exam oriented. And teachers have to rush through the textbooks to prepare students to sit for the tests. And also, Eastern education philosophy emphasizes on conformity and originality. Students have terms of school rules to follow, and such rules' main aim is to produce perfect students. Okay, so that's all some Eastern philosophy towards education, which is implementation in school practice. Okay, so here are all of what I say um about the Eastern philosophy education, professor. Thank you so much. And we can see that because it's a really a long history, and from the very beginning, maybe it's a really just like fundamental, yes, for education, but later on, I think if just combine Western elements, and I think a school practice will implement a better in a better way in our classroom. Okay, thank you so much, Professor.